recording. Woo! Welcome everybody. So deeply grateful that you are here on a Tuesday afternoon in February, Black History Month. I'm so honored and grateful for today's conversation. At Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma, we're always kind of trying to make those connections between policy, the larger world, the dominant narratives, and people's individual experiences. We believe that racism is trauma, and that's a big part of why we consider this to be anti-racism work. When you're doing racism work, all of us have, there's so much unpacking that comes with this, right? There's so much messaging we've gotten about who people are and how they are in the world, that is motivated by harmful systems, right? That is most of the systems that we have are here to oppress people and to really set a hierarchy of who matters and who doesn't. And that makes me so grateful that Ron is going to lead us today in a conversation about Black fatherhood. It's really important to look at the ways that racism has shaped males' roles in our culture and our society. And I just feel so grateful to be witness to this conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Ron, but I definitely want to shout out some of my friends that are in this space that are, when I even started to think about this topic, I was thinking about what the narrative is versus what my personal experience shows. And the men in my personal experience are absolutely amazing. Cedric Arno is here, Doug Loughborough is here, Bill Gardner's here, Rob Jones is here, Sean Harris is here, Kwame Appiah is here, and we are really grateful for that. If people wouldn't mind putting their name, and if you have an agency affiliation, that would really be helpful too. I've got my bestie Joyce McNichols is here from Wayside, and she's checking out to see for the Wayside people. I think that's Kels. Anything else I need to say before I turn it over? Jane's here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. We're recording the session today, and it will be up on our website at the end of the training and a couple hours later. But we also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to be the first ones to have access to the recording. So I'm going to put that information in the chat now. Yeah, that's what I got.
Thank you. We also, I'll put a flyer. There's a event on Black mental health tomorrow in Worcester. If you live in Worcester and you're close by, would love to have you join us. We'll put that in there. And anybody who's here, I see Everyday Miracles is here. If you have events coming up or things you're doing that you want us to know about, please feel free to advertise to us. We want to know what you're doing. We want to support you. We're really grateful for your support. Thank you. Ron, turning it over to you.
All right, thank you, Amy. What's up, everybody? My name is Ron Waddell, and I'm really grateful to be here. When Amy reached out to me about the topic, I actually felt somewhat incapable of achieving what she was hoping to achieve. But as we talked, she provided a lot of affirmation and support. And so I hope, this is a fruitful conversation. I don't have slides. How long do I have, Kelsey and Amy?
Whatever you want. We're here for 2 full hours.
Okay, cool.
And so we're just hoping you kind of give us a little bit more context for the conversation. And then, as you know, there are lots of amazing men here who are either fathers, who have had Black fathers, who are ready, willing, and able to add their.
Yeah. So we got a framework. The reason I'm asking is I'm also on the preach team at my church, so I can get to talking, is what I'm saying. And next thing you know, I'm collecting an offering. So uh, I do run a nonprofit. So you know what I'm saying. No, my name is Ron. I'm originally from South Jersey, little town called Swedesboro, about 25, 35 minutes from Philadelphia. Um, the work that I do, um, primarily, I'm gonna steal my brother Isaiah Tucker's line, is father Joshua and Isaiah. Um, those are my two boys. You might be able to see them in the background there. My oldest is 13. My youngest is 12. What I get paid to do primarily is be the executive director of Legendary Legacies. For those who may not be familiar with us, we are a reentry organization and a community violence interruption organization. Those are all fancy words that allow you to apply for funding. Really, what we do is build community amongst uh, men, primarily of color, that have been incarcerated or experienced or perpetuated violence. Um, it's deeply healing work that we get into. We don't see it as uh, a service. We see it as a vocation. Um, One really shifted my paradigm on what I was up to last year as I was traveling the country with a number of different leadership cohorts. And I was sharing about my organization, and I was really feeling myself, and they was listening so graciously, and they was like, "That's dope, Ron." And then they said, "So, are you providing a service, or are you building power?" And that also shifted something in how I see what I'm up to. And we'll probably get into a conversation around that. Um, but my plan is just to kind of set a broad context around Black fatherhood, and then really kind of talk to my experience um, as a Black son and my father's experience, and then my son's experiences, um, interwoven with some of the stuff that we do here at Legendary. Um, I felt that it might be helpful to just open with some statistics because um, Western culture likes statistics. So we can start with statistics because then that's like, oh, this is real, real. You know what I mean? But these come from the National Fatherhood Initiative, and this isn't specifically about Black fathers, but fatherhood in general. In this statement, I'm going to say may be controversial, but it's not intended to be. I really feel it's rooted in data that if and when positive adult male role models are absent from young people's lives, there are detrimental outcomes to our society. Um, so I'm just going to read these stats off, and then we get into it just so we can kind of level set what's up and why it's really important even to talk about fathers, understanding that it is within the context of a patriarchal structure. Uh, but what does healthy fatherhood and masculinity look like when it's operating well? But anyway, so the NFI says 1 in 4 children in the US, about 18 million, live without a consistent positive adult male role model or father. Children in father absent homes are 4 times more likely to live in poverty, 4 times. This is uniquely one that we see in the work that we do. 85% of youth in prison come from fatherless homes. Children without fathers are 2 times more likely to drop out of high school. And children in father absent homes are significantly higher risk for behavioral problems, substance misuse, and even suicide. These are broad generalizations, but just the importance of what the institution of fatherhood means to our society as people. And when it's not there, the impact. But we'll talk a little bit more about some of the positive aspects as well. And so the way I feel this will work, guys, is I'll set some context, I'll share my story, and then really just want to open up into a conversation with all of y'all about what y'all see. We got so much wisdom in the room, um, so much brilliance available around a very important and sacred topic to me. And so I also want to learn from y'all. I don't come here thinking I have all the answers. Um, but hopefully I can be a catalyst for some insights and thoughts around this. So first, let me let you know what brings me here. First, I'm not a historian. I'm not I don't have a doctorate in any of this stuff. I don't have a psych degree in any of this. Um, but I am a Black father. I am a son. And because of that, just like all of us, I am a man shaped by history I didn't choose, but I've inherited. And so I think it's important for me, even as I thought about this conversation, Black fatherhood, I immediately went to like the Black American father. But it was like Black fatherhood existed well before that. And so, not to get into a deep dive anthropologically and historically, but it is important that we recognize that before chattel slavery in America, many West and Central African societies were built around kinship. It was tribal. There was a collective responsibility amongst the community. It was deeply communal, deeply spiritual. There were intentional rites of passage to move young men into uh, adulthood. There was mentorship, there was lineage. Um, the historian John Thornton, he says that lineage and kinship defined identity in West Central Africa. And so I think it's important just to level set this conversation in that if anyone was under the impression that absence is the dominant narrative around Black fatherhood, that is not the origin story of Black fatherhood. Um, and so we should know that. And then the atrocities of chattel slavery, the intentionality of men being sold away from their children, being publicly emasculated in front of their wives and in their communities, denying legal marriage, essentially denying their authority and their ability to be with their own families. And we all know that wasn't accidental, but it was structural. And even in that, there is just wonderful and beautiful resilience that's available because even under all that stress, Black men fought to remain as fathers within a system that was designed to fracture the male identity and its root. There's a tremendous book I would recommend in y'all copious free time to read by Dr. Joy DeGroy called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And she really explains about that the trauma of slavery didn't end with emancipation. And I'm sure that's at the top of mind for most of us over here because this is the work we do. But it's important to understand that just because emancipation happened, the trauma of it didn't end. And there was opportunities for it to evolve and embed itself in the culture. And we talk about even like if we just talk real, like it's like the experiences that we talk about that we're helping people through, and even as we go through as this conversation around how trauma impacts our daily lives. I just think her book really level sets the fact that there were 400 years of these atrocities, and then you were free. And what therapists did they go see, Isaiah? Who helped me navigate? Go ahead, go ahead.
None. Right. It was spiritual, it was religious, but yeah, you're right. None. We didn't have any.
And so uh just imagine, right? Fractures of identity, all that is going on, but I'm still surviving and no one's helping me unpack that. Um, we're familiar with how that evolved into what Michelle Alexander talks about in her book, Mass Incarceration, these economic exclusions. And so just trauma layered on top of trauma is deeply embedded in Black fatherhood. Um, and then more recently, there is just tremendous research around epigenetics. I am not an expert on this, but I do read some books. And so, but really looking at how these studies are showing and suggesting that prolonged trauma can really influence how our genes express under stress and how our DNA is expressed. And so it's not even just dealing with memory, like literally your nervous systems, your autonomic nervous system, which is activated before your conscious brain, is really being shaped by generations of this threat. And it's embodied in you, like it's in your DNA and it's been passed on. And so we entered this conversation already operating with um, these revelations, these discoveries. Um, we also have historically in 1965, the Moynihan Report comes out, and the dominant narrative out of the Moynihan Report was the Black family is broken. It really centered the narrative of the absent Black father. Um, and it talks about that was the reason that this thing was an issue. Really looking at the like trying to pathologize the challenges of the Black family instead of looking at structural things and saying like there are built environments that are contributing to this. Um, but there are statistics and research and history that get to this. There were policies that removed men. There were housing restrictions that we still deal with that even now, and that's not just specifically Black fatherhood. But certain felonious charges prevent you from being back in the home of your family if they are on public assistance, right? Um,
You hit mute one.
You're on mute.
I would just like to suggest that you can't it's impossible to look at these historical structures that have contributed to in certain circumstances absences of the Black father but then blame it too. Um that seems unfair at the base level. um and we can talk about that more too. But that narrative has kind of been a dominant thing that's louder than the evidence. And so, like when I talk about my fatherhood, and as we all talk on here, which we know, I'm not speaking from an isolated individual. I am a descendant of that interrupted lineage. I am participating in generational repair. That's what I really want to focus a lot of our conversation on today. And choosing intentional presence. Um, but there's the biology of becoming a father. But I don't think fatherhood itself is automatic. I think that is a conscious decision. Um, in some aspects of it, it's defiant against a dominant narrative. Um, and there's real healing work in it, and it's sacred. Um, so yeah, that's just kind of like a historic broad lens of like what is going on in and around that about Black fatherhood. And before I even go into kind of talking about my personal story, I would just open it up to the group. Was there something that resonated, one or two, maybe one or two folks, three, whoever, that resonated with that, or you was just like, bro, this dude don't know what the heck he talking about. Like I'm about to go get my snack. Like, what? Just want to hear from folks on the Zoom. As you've heard some of those things, what maybe was stirred inside of you?
Go ahead, Joyce. Thank you.
Well, I tell you, Ron, what really, two things you said really stood out to me. The generational repair, um, and the interrupted lineage, and how, I understood about ancestral trauma and ancestral memory. Those are all things that I'm familiar with. But there's something about that phrase, generational repair, that really highlights for me how we live in the present and how we experience our identity. And you, in my case, our Black identity, your case specifically, your Black fatherhood identity, how so much of that is affected by that need for repair, and that just interrupted lineage. I think about like how when my parents were alive and I had given them for a Christmas present one time, something that was so meaningful to them, and that was just a chart of where they came from.
Mm,
Like, so what do you call it? Like an ancestry, they call it you know what I mean, like
Genogram.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
genogram,
yeah.
yeah.
And so, because of technology that I have access to that they didn't, their awareness, their lineage awareness was only up to their grandparents. That was it. And I was able to get them back to great great grandparents. So yeah, and it's like that. I think if they had been aware of like a name for their great great grandparents, right, that would have really had a different way of them thinking about their identity. I know it would have had a different way of my father thinking about what it took for a Black man who was born and raised in segregated Mississippi in 1933 to raise 7 children. Yeah.
gotcha. Thank you for sharing, Joyce.
Mhm.
I think Jenny had her hand up too.
Good afternoon, y'all. Thank you, Ron. I just wanted to speak because, yeah, there was a lot of resonance with what you shared. I am the descendant of an African mother and a Black American father. Um, and within the past 5 years, I've had a real epigenetic journey that manifested itself in a physical illness. So I did a lot of unpacking of all of this. And, Joyce, what you shared around the genogram, critically important. That was part of my healing journey, is to identify um, where, with those question marks, what information could I extract from those question marks in my family tree. Um, and the point I really want to make and share is around grief, a lot of unprocessed grief.
Yes.
So those question marks represent the sadness, the loss within our families. And there's no time to process that. We have to press on. We have to parent. We have to survive. Um, So yeah, I just wanted to speak that into the space. Is turning the grief into, what do you call it, Ron? Intentional presence. Um, and I'm not sure how to do that. I really am grateful to be in the room with all of these brilliant minds to talk about, yeah, what's on the other side of that grief. I'm just looking at everybody's Zoom square and see it like, yeah, there's a lot of brilliance here. There's so much strength and resilience. Um, so I'm happy to be in the room with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Jenny.
Hey, Ron.
Dr. Jones.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Love or Dr. Jones. Who's am I in charge of this? I'm running. I don't know. Should I shut up, Amy? Who's in charge of calling on people? I just started.
You got it, Ron. I
Okay.
think Rob had his hand up first.
It
All right.
took
We're
me
gonna get you,
20
Dr. Love.
minutes. It took me at least 10 minutes to like find out how to raise my hand because usually I'm running Zoom. So I was like, how do you raise your hand? But thanks so much, Amy. Thanks, Kelsey and Ron. Thank you. One thing that I want to thank you for is putting all of this in a historical context. I think sometimes when we don't know what has happened, I think part of it is we tend to repeat it. And also for bringing up epigenetics, which is really important. And it does change our physical bodies and the way we sort of deal with the trauma, the grief, and everything. Um, I got to say, I'm blessed. And one word that you mentioned that stood out with for me was intentionality. We have to be very, very intentional. If we know what has happened to us and what we've been through, we have to be very intentional in repairing it and making it better. You know, thank God for my mother. You know, my mother, my story, a little bit about my story is my mother and father separated when I was like 6. But my mother was very much intentional in saying, oh no, you are still going to be in their lives. And so we spent every other weekend with my father, whom once I was an adult, my mother said, yeah, I think I made a bad mistake. But the 2 boys that came out of it was good. And she was very intentional about surrounding us with positive black males. Like really, like whether it was a program, whether it was family members. And she said, when you have your family, make sure you just don't talk about the bad, you talk about the good. Because not all the black fathers in my family on both sides were great, but they weren't all bad. And so uplifting those things, and I'll just leave with this. How many of us, when we were growing up, there were men in our lives and we said, I'm never going to be like that. Then all of a sudden, when you're about 27 or 28, you're like, oh my God, I'm that person. And so for me, the word is intentional. We have to be very, very intentional with everything that we do, how we present ourselves and all of that, because we've got a lot of repairing to do.
Thank you for sharing, Rob. And Dr. Luff, did you have something you wanted to add to the dialogue?
Man, I'm all messed up now. I'm all kinds of messed up now. I thought I had my words all planned. I had something ready to go. And man, I'll just say I'm very glad to be here. Greetings, everyone. My name is Doug Luffborough, but I go by Dr. Luff. Grew up in Worcester, Tatnick Square, Doherty High School, but lived in San Diego the last 25 years, and very glad to be here. Definitely committed to the work, and I guess just going with the theme of what I've been hearing, I think the generational repair like really struck me. And then what also struck me, which other people have commented, is that um, I don't know past my mother, where like the historical context. I had to do it all on my own. I will tell you that Loughborough is a slave name. Loughborough came from England. Two brothers in the 1700s landed in uh, Alabama, and that's how a lot of us got our last names, was because they knew what plantation you belonged to. So I've wrestled with that. I struggle with that, but I don't walk away from it either, because as we go through what we're going on today, and people are trying to say this didn't exist, that didn't exist, this didn't happen. My last name is Loughborough, and I'm half African American, half white, and I've wrestled with that. But what I think I've struggled with the most, they said that the 1928 to 1945 was the silent generation. They were called the silent generation. And I had the hardest time, with my mom, just trying to like tell me, like, hey mom, like tell me more about my history. Tell me more about where I came from. Tell me more. She didn't want to talk about it. And I realized that she didn't want to talk about it because the trauma and the pain was so deep that there was no word she could put to it. And I feel that way. This is both a conversation of being here with all you fine people, and I'm so glad that you're committed to the work, because there's not many places and spaces where I can do this in my mid 50s. And so just to have this opportunity, I'm feeling I have a dichotomy of pain, extreme pain, and extreme joy, and I go back and forth, depending on the conversation. But that's okay, you know. So I'll just leave it there for now. I'm glad to be here. I liked. I ran a nonprofit for many years, and it was centered around boys and girls programs but particularly for we have boys to men, men on the rise, fatherhood is forever, and it's just really important to me. My dad was not in my life. I was just raised by a single parent housekeeper who cleaned homes in Worcester, and she was great, and she loved the Lord, and with those two, that's how I got here. Now, I say this both with joy and pain that I'm the father I never had, but there wasn't a lot of things I knew about fatherhood. And someone just mentioned, oh, Robert mentioned it. I said when I grew up, I never want to be like my dad, and I still don't know my dad, but I do see that some of the things I don't like about myself, that they came from my dad, and I have to start naming them so that I can change them. So thanks for having me.
Appreciate you. I think I saw, Dr. Love, I saw Amy's comment. I'd also would encourage you as you're able to stay in that tension of joy and pain, but also take care of yourself in the space for everyone as well. I think I saw my brother Sean Harris throw his hand up. What's up, Sean?
Afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon. Appreciate being here. Like I mentioned in the chat, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to jump off at 1, but I definitely wanted to be a part of this conversation because it's so crucial and poignant. And we're talking about the reparative piece and what that looks like in terms of Black fatherhood. A couple things that I want us to think about going forward. If you can, and you decide to speak, and you are parenting as a father, what are the ages of your kids and how many do you have? Personally, I have 3, 36, 33, and 23, which is wild because I just turned 30 and I don't know how any of this happened. But the reality for me is I have 2 boys and a girl, right? And when I look back at my parenting journey, did I raise them differently based on what it's going to take to live as a Black man in this society, what it's going to take to live as a Black woman in this society, right? I can never teach my daughter how to be a woman, but I can teach her the things that I feel are necessary for her to be safe as a woman living in society, right? Versus how I raised my boys. And I think when you talk about that reparative piece and some of the stuff that we didn't get from fathers that may not have been there, or the lineage that wasn't passed down, that you said something earlier that was so crucial, that rites of passage, right? We don't get bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and any of those things. Those rites of passage for us, for a lot of us, have been, we might have an uncle or two who, when he comes out of the joint, like, listen, man, I just did a 3-piece. You don't want to do it. Like, that's not the rites of passage that we need. And we don't always have, with 4th grade failure syndrome and everything, we always don't have people jumping in saying your next rite of passage is high school to college to grad school, those things. So I think a lot of the stuff that we missed is why we're in reparative mode. But again, you talk about it's not just our generation or even the generation before us. It goes back 5 or 6. So I think having that conversation about how do we repair it and how do we fix it is crucial. And it's fantastic that Amy and you guys are doing this today. But this needs to be a conversation that we have frequently, not just Black History Month, but on a regular basis, right? So that is crucial. And when I look around and I look in these squares and I see the brothers that are in these squares that are doing great work, it makes me appreciate the fact that I see that the reparative work is being done. But I always try to big up my brothers, but I'll use Ron as the example, because Ron is doing reparative work for people, not just around the fathering space, but just around the manhood space. And a lot of us, that message of what manhood looks like, was always inaccurate, right? So how can you raise a young man or even a young woman if you don't have the correct messages about what manhood means? So I thank you, Isaiah, Rob, all the brothers that are on here that are doing that work. Because it makes all the difference in the world. So for example, when I get a lot of the younger brothers that come here, by the time they get to the college and we're having those conversations, I can pretty much tell who's had those Black uncles that have chimed in, who's had those fathers in their lives, just based on the conversations that we have and how they approach being corrected or being talked to by another man who they may or may not know really well. So I just, before I just want to say I appreciate the work that all of you guys are doing, but this has to be a conversation that we're having more on a regular basis. I know tonight, actually, at 7, myself, Kwame, who's on here, and someone else that actually have a Zoom tonight because we're going to be doing some stuff around black maternal health from the male's perspective, which will be coming up in April. So we're meeting tonight. So whatever resources that come out of that, I want to make sure you guys get as well. But Amy, first of all, thank you for including me in the conversation. But Ron, keep up the good work. I'm super happy to be in you guys' presence.
Feelings mutual, my brother. Feelings mutual. Hands that are up. So right now I have 2, I think. So I'm gonna go with UHAI for health, and then my man Alan. I'd appreciate your patience if you don't mind going after.
Hi, I'm Jane Kimani, and I work with UHAI for Health. So, for me, my perspective to this conversation, I work with African immigrants and refugee population, and our experience is also different. When we migrate here, first of all, we don't think racism is a thing until we are very, very deep into that. And if I talk about my own experience, when I came here, I would be like, why are people talking about racism? Because we grew up in a community that we did not have racism, but there were other kind of injustices that were there. And one of my mentor and the husband is here kept talking about it, and I'm like, why is she complaining all the time? And until my eyes opened and I could see clearly, and especially working in the healthcare system, that we were very, very much affected by it. Now that I'm working in the community, I have seen what it has done to our fathers, and I'm truly grateful for Kwame, who is working with our young kids, and also for Sean Harris, who is working with our husbands. Like, my husband always goes for the monthly meeting, whereby it's a safe space for Black men to meet and talk about what is going on. Unfortunately, we have so many other men who do not have that space. And when racism and other injustices affect them, what do they turn to? Substance use disorders. Last year alone, we lost 15 people in our community. 15 is a huge, huge number. You don't find that in the news. You don't find it at the Worcester TNG. It just gets buried. And it's very, very unfortunate. So these conversations, unfortunately, do not happen much in the African community. And I wish we would have such conversations. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing and that insight for sure. Brother Al, talk to him.
Hey, hey everyone. Hey Ron, I just want to say thank you for being here in your service. And I would like to thank everyone involved for helping create this space to come together. So my name's Alan. I work for Everyday Miracles as a recovery coach, and I am also a father in recovery. I am the father of a 18-year-old son and a 15-year-old young lady. And it has been quite the journey, especially because I am a father in recovery from substance use disorders. And I heard Mr. Jones, I believe, chime in that it's a lot was about being misinformed by misinformed people. So I was raised the best that my mom and my uncles could raise me, given what they knew on parenting. And then the rest of it was left up to the neighborhood and the environment that I was in. And as a Black father, I understand the importance now that, yes, the line, it takes a village to raise a man or a woman. I have to be very mindful of what village I'm allowing to raise. my man and my woman, right? And unfortunately, I'm having a late start because of my substance use disorder. Um, but the one thing that my kids keep, and I'm not sure if anyone else is this lucky, but it gives me a level of gratefulness because my kids always remind me that, Dad, that was the past. You're here today, and that's what matters. But I find myself overcompensating as a Black father in America. Meaning when I go out, I have to spend a little extra, right? To show people that I'm this dad and I care and you know, and I find myself throwing money at every situation with my children. And I really feel as though it's because, right, there are these certain stereotypes that are perpetuated amongst my culture, right? And one I've had personal experience with, right? So when my 18-year-old son, when he was still in utero, I remember coming home from work and his mom said, "Oh yeah, I just got on welfare." And I looked at her and I said, "Why would you do that? Like, why would you do that?" So I was never given a chance to say, "Hey, like, as a man, let me provide for our household." It showed me that the stereotype is, yeah, I love this guy. I got pregnant by this guy, but he's Black. Let's pad this real quick. And I think that I'm still dealing with that trauma today, right? Always feeling like I'm less than or inferior than my counterparts at parenting. So it's always causing me to overcompensate on something, right? Like my daughter wants the sweet 16 part, and Lord knows I can't afford it, but I said yes. I said yes, right? And this is why I'm glad that we can hold these kind of spaces, because I want to hear from other brothers or other people who have the same lens, or can see through some of the same lenses that I am today, and can help me. Because there's one thing that's constant in life, man, that's learning for me. So thanks for letting me chime in real quick.
Appreciate you, brother Allen. And if you're adopting, let me know because I'll make some requests. Brother Isaiah, man, chime in real quick, and then I'll move this forward if that's cool with everyone.
Yeah, and I'll be very quick. Like everyone else said, I definitely think this is a great opportunity for all of us to connect. And I really appreciate what you've shared already, Ron. I'm already charged up with all the comments and information people are sharing. It's super helpful. So my name is Isaiah Tucker. My son is 13. I'm the father of Elijah, a 13-year-old boy. Ooh-wee, it's a wild ride. But I love him dearly. And just the thing I'll highlight that I love that you mentioned, Ron, just the language you're using, right? You talk about generational repair. And for me, it's just so important to, as I'm looking back and understanding my own personal history, my ancestors, just being intentional with the language I use to talk about myself, to talk about my family. As we all know, our voice carries a lot of weight, especially for our kids. So just being intentional and mindful of how we're describing things, how we're describing ourselves. And so far you've been great, Ron, and everyone here with just the language, how we're wording things and how we're the words we're using to describe our history.
I tell you, man, brother Isaiah is a bad man. This man, bad meaning good, not bad meaning bad is what I'm saying for the folks that might not know. He's a bad man. Blessed to know that brother just doing some powerful work out here, man. And I'll be excited to be able to say I knew him when, because he's going bigger and better places. So thank you, brother. One of the things we should know, though, is that there was a 2016 CDC report on the state of fatherhood in America. And this isn't something that everyone heard about, but that report found that Black fathers who, whether they live or don't live, but these are the most engaged fathers daily in caregiving with their children. And what they look as caregiving is feeding, bathing, homework, and presence. And so out of all demographics, Black fathers were the most engaged, and then our Latinx fathers were number two. So just quite interesting as you think about what the data shows, and then kind of this narrative around absent Black fathers and all that kind of stuff. So that report is, well, maybe it's not. They might have taken it down. They're doing some wild stuff on their sites these days, but you could probably find it somewhere. So really, I want to take the next maybe chunk of this and share my story, but in a way that weaves in some of these contexts and really hope my story as an experience to offer insights, stir thoughts, criticisms, um, conversation, in understanding that my experience is not the totality of Black fatherhood, but I believe there are some profound things that have taken place that could be helpful to folks on the call, as they have been to me in the work that I do, and me as a father. So I'll start with the fact that I was gonna I can start how I grew up and all that. I'm gonna start with a call in 2016. In 2016, I was driving back from Boston. I had attended some meeting, and I was in the car, and I was driving back, and I was by myself, and it was quiet in the car, and I had been married at that point for 11 years, and we had two sons, but I had this overwhelming sensation that I was about to screw it all up. Like, this is all about to fall apart. And I really was just holding it together. I married their mom, Sharice, after 4 months. We bought a house in 2008. I changed jobs, which was like a 50% reduction in pay 2 years after having that house. She changed careers. In there, we had the two boys within 15 months, and it was a beast. That's a lot of transition, a lot of critical life changes happening for both of us. And from what I knew is you just show up and you keep getting it done. I had the the proverbial white picket fence, two children, one dog, all that, and I had made it. That was the goal. But what folks weren't aware of, even in my church, I'm a follower of Jesus. We can unpack church another time. But in doing that, I've grown up with a mother of faith, deeply spiritual, in how I approach all of these things. And so I was praying about who can I talk to about this? And sadly enough, there was no one in my church that I thought I could go to and talk to about this. And so I was wearing this mask. I would go to church. Everything was always good. But, in my house, my wife at the time, Sharice, knew I was probably drinking a 6-pack a night, smoking weed. And this is how I had learned to manage my stress. So anyway, in 2016, I'm driving home from Boston, and I'm feeling this, and I'm praying about it. And for me, the universe, the Lord, for me, it's the Lord. It was like, yo, you got to call your dad. Now, the reason why that's wild is I hadn't talked to my father in probably 25 years at that point. I never knew that man. And I had all these excuses about why I couldn't get in touch with him for all my life and all that. But in this moment, I was like, I should talk to this guy because I think he's going to have some insight to share about how not to screw it up. And the reason I thought that was because there were pictures of me and my father when I was a little boy, before the age of retaining memories. And for those of us that have children and have the joy, the blissful experience of being able to hold that life in your hands and observe that, is so powerful. And in that picture, I could see my dad holding me in that joy in his face. And yet here I am 25 years later, and I haven't talked to this individual. And so really what I wanted to find out from him, and the question I asked him after 25 years was, hey yo, dad, like what happened? Like no bad. Like I'm just straight up, like I'm curious, like what happened, fam? Like I see this picture, I got kids of my own, and doggone it, like I don't know what would make me not want to be here for these. Like I don't know. The only person that's gonna know that is you, dog. Like, so tell me, like, what's going on? Um, and that was the first time that I realized that my father, as well as the fact that he was my father, at one point he was just a little boy too. And what he shared with me was that he had never known his father. His mother had a extramarital affair with a traveling tradesman and then needed to hide his identity from her husband. So as a baby, he went to live with his grandmother in Kansas City and grew up with this understanding that his name was Ronald Johnson. He did not find out his name was Ronald Waddell until he applied for the military at age 18 and had to get a copy of his birth certificate, and it said Waddell on it. And so that's when we found out that his father is Cornelius Waddell. And so just thinking about what his experience was, hearing that, and then he proceeded to say, hey man, so this is how I grew up, this is what I went through. And as a matter of fact, what he was able to do by being in the military was he did leverage his VA loan, and he bought a single family home in the suburbs of New Jersey. He and my mom had grown up in Chester, PA. Chester, Pennsylvania is on the Delaware River, industrialized city, but had experienced great economic decline. And in the mid to late 80s, I was born in 81. Through the 70s, 80s, even still, it used to be as one of the most dangerous cities in America. It would fluctuate in and out of the top 10. And so he's like, I got to get my family out of here. He bought a house on the suburb side of New Jersey. And so in talking with him, he was like, yo, Ron, the mortgage on that house was like 375. Everybody's mouth is dropping now, especially where we live at. But he was paying 375 for this single family home, about 1,500 square feet. And he was working at an oil refinery, and he would pick up doubles and triples. Cocaine and crack was his drug of choice, and so cocaine, you could work some doubles and some triples. And so what he would do, he was saying, is like he was making like $1,000 a week with a $375 mortgage. And so he was like, bro, I would come home, I'd throw your mom some dollars, make sure y'all was good. And then I was hitting the casino at Atlantic City. And as far as he thought, like he was killing it. Like from what his experience was, like he was killing it. And the beginning of I have two older sisters, and then there's me, and then my younger sister, Kelly. So my two older sisters had a very different experience than me and my sister, Kelly, because the facade that he was holding up, very similar to mine, was eroding. And by the time I was in kindergarten, he wasn't present in our life. What ended up with us on public assistance. We had the we had the food stamps when it wasn't cool. You had to tear them out of the thing. People in line be mad at you. Now swipe the card. It's a little bit more dignity in the card, honestly. But in any case, in navigating those situations, for me, just being in that space as the only male and just watching other folks interact with their fathers, it was doing something to me. I didn't realize at the moment what it was, but there was consistent moments of where he was supposed to come, he wouldn't show up. He was going to deliver on these types of things, but it didn't happen. And so then over time, that starts to communicate to me certain aspects. My mom raised us until 15. She passed away from cancer when I was 15. My younger sister was about 9. My oldest sister then moved into the familial home to take care of me and my younger sister. She was dating a an abusive male, physically, socially, emotionally, spiritually. He was just not a great person. And so here I was, 15, without a father, without a mother, and dealing with this individual. And at one night, things escalated to a point where it got physical between him and I. And my oldest sister asked me to leave. So I slept in a car for 2 nights. This is before cell phones and all that. And this is how I ended up in Massachusetts. I lived with my second oldest sister for 2 years. Well, I moved to Westboro, and I lived in Westboro for 2 years. But during that 2 years in Westboro, it was very tumultuous. I lived with my second oldest sister for 1 year. And in Westboro, what was available to me was there was the strictness of Karen Waddell, which was my mother who had us in church. Like that was not a thing. My sister Ann and her husband were 21, 22. I'm 15. All that adolescent stuff going on. And a lot of my peers like was drinking alcohol, smoking weed. So I got exposed and it was like, oh, this is dope. And for me, what I didn't realize till many years later is that I was developing a habit while these folks was experimenting. I was numbing a lot of the trauma, a lot of the pain of what I had been through as an adolescent. And so what happened with that was like I blended in. Like it didn't seem like, there was something wrong with Ron. It was just like, oh, he just chill. He is a party guy, right? Like, and so there was never any insight to like maybe something's not well. Like he laughs, he's fun, he parties a lot. And so I learned really well how to perform in those spaces to get accepted. But still dealing internally with this identity issue. For those who may not be familiar with Westboro, it's that was a whole culture shock, man. I remember one of the dudes when he turned 16, they bought him an 8-4. He crashed it up 2 weeks, they bought him another one. You know what I mean? Like that was just a different life than what Ron grew up with. And so trying to blend into those spaces was interesting, but it also showed me like there's a different life, bro. Like being in this space, being in these, like it was no longer a full house. I used to sit Friday night, watch TGIF and watch like Full House, right? And be like, yo, that'd be amazing. But then I was like in these houses, I was like in them spaces. Like I knew the folks that this was happening to. And so it was like, yo, this is achievable. Like it's possible. Like I'm literally in these spaces where it's going down. I graduated high school after another year and a half of homelessness. A foster family took me in. I finished high school and I went to college. I did a year and a half at college. My first semester, sophomore year, I got a FAFSA. I got a bill. I didn't know you had to fill out a FAFSA every year. I was 17, 18, no guardian, no nothing. So I ended up squatting illegally in the college dorms for 2 years. And that was fun for a while because you party, you be chilling. I was that dude. But it became increasingly depressing as I saw my peers matriculating. And my substance use habit was accelerating heavy. At that point, it was whatever I could get my hands on, I was ingesting. I never did any sort of injections. And I didn't take ecstasy because I watched the episode called Scott the Ecstasy Father, and they talked about holes in his brain, and I was nervous about my brain and my intellect. But drinking bottles of Robitussin and just stacking substances on top of each other, accelerants, depressant, however I can escape. And then in that atmosphere again, like that the peers in that culture, like it was accepted. And so I was never like called out until attempted suicide for the first time when I was 19, had to get sectioned. I progressed from that. I came back again, no real therapeutical, no real therapy after that. Just came back to the campus and continued whatever I was going to do. Found out my younger sister had gotten pregnant. She was 14. And so I joined the military. I joined the military because I wanted to get her into my housing. I wanted to get her out of that situation. Um, and so went to the military, was there for 6 weeks. They told me I was unfit for any military duty due to an eye condition. That's how I ended up in Worcester. I came back and went to Job Corps, did a business clerical trade, got a job as a receptionist working downtown Worcester. And so then I meet my wife. I get involved, even before I met her, I get involved in a lot of community work here in the city of Worcester because of that background context I just gave you. But now here I am. I made it, right? And I'm on this call with my father, and this is what he's explaining to me. And I'd love to tell you that that turned around the marriage, but it didn't. It did end in a separation. It's cool, like we work amicable together to support our kids, but that was the most. What happened when that went down was I had built my identity completely around having obtained this mythical perception of what it meant to be a father, having this house, having the, and so when she decided to leave, I literally had an identity crisis. I had no idea who I was. I had no substance. I had no foundation to put that on. Like it, and so my anger and my bitterness turned toward her because the fact of the matter is this ain't Black father stuff. This is humanist stuff. Like, and what I want to be clear on is not saying things are people's fault, but there is a responsibility we all have in circumstances. And when we avoid taking responsibility, inevitably you will create a villain. And so she became the villain. It was uncomfortable because we were still living in the house. The boys were 5 and 6, and my mental health deteriorated very rapidly to the point that I had taken myself to a rest stop in Connecticut with a bottle of sleeping pills, $200, and I was going to live out of that vending machine, and then I was going to eat this bottle of sleeping pills. Fortunately, my friends had contacted, and this is a whole separate side, but they had contacted someone who I wouldn't even have thought was a friend at the time, but he's a dear friend now. At the time, he was a gang unit officer, Justin Benez. And Justin Benez reached out to me while I was in this moment of darkness. And I don't even know where I was in Connecticut, but his conversation was just like, bro, I need you to come home. And when I got back to my house, he was there in my driveway and he gave me a huge hug. And we both were crying because the fact of the matter was, he was like, bro, whatever we got going on, I know you're a father and I'm a father, and there's something, but this transcended these external roles, bro. You know, that was a powerful moment for me, deeply transformative. And so in that moment, I knew, or I didn't know, I was at my church, and I'm really very thankful to the church that I was in because they were intentional, not just around spiritual support, but there was also like, yo, Ron, like you need to go see a therapist, like you need to get tapped into a psychiatrist, like you need like full, like we can offer this, but like also being very clear about where their expertise stops. That had not been my experience growing up in the Black church. Growing up in the Black church for me, it was very much like, all right, man, you just need to pray some more. You just need to like read some more scripture. And so what that happens is like it perpetuates this internal shame dialogue because now it's like that means something's wrong with me. I'm not doing enough of this, or I'm not doing this well. And so now that shame causes me to hide that stuff. And now I'm in a space where I can't even communicate with the people that I feel are supposed to care about with me the most, which dag on if that ain't the most toxic situation to be in. where the people that I feel like are supposed to know me the most and be transparent with, that I am presenting this surrogate so that it can be accepted, because I'm really dealing with the shame of the community, because we really haven't really all depth into our healing. In any case, therapy, that was the game changer, man. Like jumping into that therapist, working with my therapist, Sue, for 2.5 years. It was, initially conversation around the divorce, but then therapists do what therapists do. And now we talking about my childhood and all that kind of stuff. She got me. But she was really good. And I bring that up just because there was one moment, and I heard some of our brothers, maybe even Alan, say, like, when I was sharing this with her, she like, it wasn't a shock, but she was just like, Ron, who have you talked to about this? And I was like, oh, no one. And at that time, I'm 37. And she's like, you haven't talked to anybody about any of this. And I'm like, nah. And her question was something along the like, how are you here? Like, how are you, like, what are you, she framed it in the positive side of like, the fact that you are functioning at this level is quite fascinating to me as a therapist, and you have never like talked to or unpacked some of this. And for me, what that was like, I just thought that was life, right? That's normal. Like, bro, I'm just living life. I don't know. I got glasses when I was about 7 years old. And until I got glasses, I thought everyone saw like that. When I put them on, I was like, oh, shoot, you can actually read from sitting in the third row. Like, oh, everyone saw like that. And so that was a moment of like, epiphany for me that this was not, and graciously unpacking some of these things and delving into it. And for me, it was very important because as I talk about generational repair, to me, it's not just the historical context, but it's also like what is available to me in this moment to choose different for my lineage. And that is really the story of Legendary Legacies and where this comes from. It's a verse in Proverbs 13:22, and it says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." And that's not just about financial inheritance when I think about it, but character. How have we set up this next generation to be better off than where I was? And just that phrase, the phrasing of that is, a good man does this for 2 generations after. Like, that's the baseline for a good man. Like, how have you set up that? And I think also of our Native American indigenous tribes who, there was one here in Massachusetts, I believe. I can't remember exactly which one I was reading about, but when they would plant corn, the mindset is, I'm planting this for the 7th generation after me. And so the intentionality about what I'm doing today and how that has impacts on what's coming, profound stuff when you really can grasp this. And in the moment, even in the midst of all the arduous trauma, things that we're navigating, what gives me hope is that there are seeds being planted that I might not even see. But just to have the opportunity to contribute to that, it's fire. And so I think about that with our work with our young men inside the organization, but even more importantly with my sons, Joshua and Isaiah. And so I heard my brother, Dr. Huff, talk about the silent generation and all these things. And man, that's real. And then on top of this conversation, besides just Black fatherhood, the Terrence Real does a ton of great work. And he's in Massachusetts. Terrence Real has written a number of great books on male psychology, male depression. His book, I Don't Want to Talk About It, is a tremendous book. The Secret, I think the subtitle is The Secret or the Hidden Life of Male Depression. And he just talks about how sometimes depression in males manifests itself in socially acceptable ways that don't actually show up in the DSM. So like, all of a sudden I can become a workaholic and it's just like, yo, this dude is locked in, like he's grinding. But I'm really just escaping through actually something that's socially acceptable and no one's pushing into it, but there's depression underlying that. I believe that was a lot what was going on even in my time early on in developing this organization and doing the work. But as I've continued to work through this with my sons, it was a matter of how do I show up in a way that not just tells them, but that models them. In my faith tradition, we call it discipleship. And so it's not enough for me to tell you what you should do, but I actually have to show you what to do. And then we run into the issue of the conversation, well, how do I show you if no one's ever shown me? Right? And so then that's where community is so important. And the core of our work at Legendary Legacies, I'm a tangent because some folks ask me all the time. They say, Ron, I get it. You're doing intervention, but why don't you do prevention? There's 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds. And I get that. I do. And folks that are working with them is dope. My strategy, though, is if I've got a bunch of unhealed men being deployed to help a lot of unhealed boys, I'm going to create more harm than good. And in order for me to do the prevention well, and for us to do prevention well, it starts internally here with the adult males doing this inner work and having these conversations so we can be aware of why we show up the way we show up. Because the majority of what's going on in our real life experience is not what's happening in this experience. These are past experiences, and some of that rooted in epigenetics that are playing out into this real time right now. The neuroscience has shown us that we take in about 11 million bits of information every second. And our conscious brain can only grasp about 40 to 50 bits. And you're asking, Ron, what's a bit? I don't know. Someone smarter than me came up with that. But I know that ratio is not good. And so what that means is that the majority of what my experience is being made up from my brain, which its primary job is to keep me safe. And so I'm being informed by those experiences. And so the ability to have that understanding, work with folks who are skilled at walking you through some of those dark moments so that you can be aware how this machine, your body, this thing operates and how it's working is critical for our work here at Legendary before you go try to help someone else to do that. As a matter of fact, it's irresponsible if I do that. It's irresponsible if I ask someone to lead a young person somewhere that they themselves have never been. And the structures of our culture is because we want to have such, they're built on these systems that require outcomes within these confined metrics. Like, I get it, but that's inconsistent with the human experience. And so the way that shows up is I need you to be at this mark at this moment. I'll never forget one of my first conversations with a funder. I wasn't even working here with someone else, and they asked me. They said, Ron, how many units did you serve this grant period? And I had never been in a conversation like that. And I said, units? Excuse me. I thought boxes, crates. No, they were talking about people. And so just the dehumanization of someone because it's based on a metric, right? How many units did you serve? If I have a conversation and add the humanity of who you are, now the ability for me to make a decision is more difficult because I have to wrestle with my own humanity. And so by making you a unit, I can dehumanize you and reduce you to a number on a page that allows me to avoid the cognitive dissonance if I really do operate with you as an individual. And so our work here is deeply about creating a space in which that safety is first felt, because you can't do any work with anyone if they don't feel safe. For my experts, you're pushed into your bottom brain, your survival brain, your amygdala, the ability to access higher level thinking, your prefrontal cortex, and all those things that help you think more logically and long term, like you can't even get access to. And so if the very environment that is trying to provide support to you does not feel safe to you, you're limited into what access you have to do the work you need. And in some ways, I'm still pretending to be this thing that I think you want me to be. So how can we really work with who I am? And so our work really is rooted in that, is creating that community of brothers that are in those spaces, so that you can step in and have those conversations. And that has to be modeled. I remember working with my sons as they've grown up, and what I knew as far as punishment was you spank them. That's what I got. I got spanked. Whatever was close, my mom beat me with. And some people are like, oh, it's abuse, it's abuse. But I think some of that might even be rooted in trauma, in the fact that, like, if we go back to what we talked about, the context of chattel slavery and understanding, like, yo, I have a Black son in this world, and like, I am going to chastise him corporally out of love, is what you would say. I didn't understand it. But within the context of, I'm just scared for you. And so I think, like, I need you to know that you have to listen to me, because out there something can happen to you. Right. And even in my mother being who she was, there was those conversations of, like, she would say things when I would get spanked, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. Or she would say things like, I'm doing it because I love you. And so at an 8-year-old, to tell someone, like, I'm going to beat you because I love you, like, I don't have capacity to make sense of that. But that's what I was taught. So when my son Josh was 4 and he did something that I didn't think he should do, boom, I popped him, right? And so Josh is so daggone gangster, the dude hit me back. So I hit him a little harder, and he hit me back harder. And so then I'm like, what the heck going on? So I said to Josh, I said, why did you hit me? And this man said the most pragmatic thing, and it changed the way I parented around that. He said, because you hit me. I said, daggone, right? Like, it was just fire that he had agency over his own body. Like, I don't care if you my pop or whatever. Like, you hit me, so I hit you back. And that shifted even how I showed up as a father. Like, that wasn't going to work for Josh. And it pushed me to think about what I was really up to. And so the spanking in that moment, there's a lesson I want him to learn. And when I reflected on my own experience, the lesson I learned was I don't want to be beat. And so I became a really good liar, expert. Because what I learned is I don't want that punishment. I didn't learn that I should listen to my mother because that shows respect. Or I should listen to my mother because she cares about these types of outcomes. And so how I've chosen to show up in parents, some call it gentle parent. I don't know. I haven't really gotten to the gentle parenting books and all those kind of things. For me, it's a matter of being able to say, I would want my sons to be able to come and have these conversations with me, which I didn't even ever think about, because if I came to have the conversation about something I was having a difficulty with or upset about, my mom was either go pray or I'm getting beat. And so it was no space to have those conversations. I remember probably about 2 years ago, I'll back up before I say that, because one of the things was like, and how do I model that for Joshua? Two, like, we've had this conversation around my story, around what it means to not have had a father. We've talked about my times of homelessness, and all those different things. And just let them ask questions. I've talked about how sad I was. And even through therapy, I've been able to heal enough to be present with a lot of those feelings more readily now. And so in sharing those, sometimes tears come, and not being quick to wipe them away, because sometimes tears happen, Josh. And so allowing him and Isaiah to see it. But 2 years ago, I was coming back from a board meeting, because being at board meetings is important. And being at task force meetings is important. And that meeting ran late, and it ran late enough that was missing. I was going to miss getting Joshua and Isaiah to their soccer practice. And so on my way home, I'm feeling the weight, I'm feeling the guilt of not being there on time. And I know you guys are much better humans than me, but I'm thinking of what lie I can tell to soften this and avoid the responsibility of not being there on time. But as I got in the house, I said to Josh, I said to him, I said, he was sitting at this computer, Isaiah was at the TV. I said, hey y'all, I need to let y'all know I'm back, but I'm late. I didn't get back in time to get you guys to soccer. And Joshua said something to the effect of, "Oh, that's okay. I know you're at work and work is important." Yo, and that hit me right in my chest, like heavy. And I stopped him and I said, Josh, work ain't no more important than you though, bro. And so let me tell you something, man. If you're upset, if you are disappointed about this, like you have every right to be. And then he started crying and he said, Dad, you knew how important this was. And they needed me there. I'm the striker, and we were scrimmaging this team. And it was very hard for me to hear that. It was hard for me to hear that because in that moment, the trauma of my past was showing up and saying that you're your father, Ron. I'm not. But what you just did to Joshua was what your father did of never showing up. And that feeling that you had is what's going to happen to him. And so I'm projecting my own stuff into this experience that he's having. Instead of, which I had to work through, but get to be present and hear what this man is saying, hear what this individual is saying, and what it meant for me to be there for him. And so if y'all see me jump off calls, leave task force meetings, not be there, that's because y'all not more important than Joshua and Isaiah. And so for me to model that conversation with him and not just say it, but walk through it and give him that space, I'd like to think that that is start of that generational repair. I'd like to think that that is some of that legacy building that we're working on. And then last year, I got a call at the beginning of February, about a year ago to the date, from my oldest sister. And she left a message and she said, hey, Ron, it's Dawn. Your dad has stage 4 prostate cancer. It's very aggressive, and they're not sure how long he's going to live. And that brought up a lot of emotions for me. And I wrestled a lot on what to do with it. My sons, I always asked, can we meet him? They only have one grandparent still alive, their maternal grandmother. Their paternal grandfather, the maternal grandfather passed away 5 years ago. And so they would always ask to meet my dad. He's in Philadelphia somewhere. He's still very much, at the time, he was navigating, he wouldn't say it, but like I've worked with unhoused people, and he had all the symptoms of an unhoused person. Like he knew all the spots to go get food, all the spots to get clothes, just how he carried himself. And so it was not always easy to track him down. But there was an opportunity to go down and meet with him. And what I realized in a time of meditation and prayer was there was a gift available to me, but it would be difficult. And I was the only one that could do it, though. And I needed to go to Philadelphia with my sons for them to meet their grandfather. But what I needed to share with my father, I needed to give him a father's blessing, even though I was his son. Because that individual, that man, who ended up becoming my father, had never known a father to tell him that he was loved, to tell him that he was valuable, to tell him that he was cared for. And I wanted him to know that, brother, no matter what happened, I need you to know the fact that you fought through your traumatic experiences and all that, and you worked hard to buy this home to get there. It's why these two boys are here, Dad. I need you to know that before you transition, bro. Their experience, Dad, it's different. It's different than yours. It's different than mine. And their children's will be different too. But Pop, you made a decision, man. And even though all those things happened to you and you weren't around and all that, you're valuable. And I love you. We left the hospital room and we went to I took them to an indoor mini golf because I was an emotional wreck. And so they got to play. And then we went back to the hotel room. They watched TV. I climbed into the bed and cried for probably an hour, sobbed. But there was some deep cleansing, deep healing, purging, and forgiveness that was available. And in that moment, to be the bridge between what that past was and what the future has available is extremely powerful. And as I think about Black fatherhood and all the stuff that has gone on as we set this context, that's not your identity, though. They have had impact. They have influenced. They very much shape how you experience the world. But who you are in the essence of your being here, created in the image of the divine, in and of itself is immensely valuable. It's immensely powerful. One of my favorite songs is by this rapper. His name's Big Sean. And the song's One Man Can Change the World. And the truth is, it happens slow and then all at once. It's in the decisions that we make each day, each moment, that are shaping the next generation and the generations to come. And our ability to engage in the work that our skilled therapists and emotional guides like Isaiah and others are on the call, like they're the gift of them to navigate us through understanding our existence and what happened to us not being who we are is critical in relationship to developing a different outcome. And the fact of the matter is that everything we see was just someone's idea. Everything you experience, this computer, this desk, at some point it was just someone's idea, y'all. And so, yes, these things have happened, but it's not who you are. And so the clarity of identity and the idea of who you want to be and how you show up in the world for the seventh generation or the second generation, like for me and for us, as like that is a space where we have to anchor into because there is so much baggage and trauma in the past. And we have been socialized into spaces where it is not safe to have these conversations. Whether you black, just male, right? Like we've been socialized to say there is a certain archetype of what masculinity looks like and how that should be expressed. But at the totality of who we are, it is in our most difficult situations where we find the deepest connection. When we can express that level of vulnerability, we give courage to someone else to then step into their vulnerability, as Brene Brown talks about, really is courage, because courage, as I define it, is the ability to do something while you're still afraid. If you're not still afraid, it wouldn't be courage. But the courage to do that, to step into something while you're still afraid, it liberates other people to do the same, even if you do it messy, because it's like it's possible. And because I have not seen that and you show that to me, I am curious about how that can work. And in Legendary Legacies, man, I watch that happen every day. I'm supremely blessed to watch these gifted individuals who folks have written off and a large part of society has said are no good anymore, do tremendous work in cultivating a community of healing amongst these brothers who have been inside of a carceral system, which is the antithesis of community. And so on a very intentional level, the way our space is built out, as soon as you walk in, if anyone's been here, there's a huge mural on the wall, and there's a giant man. I should have had a slide for this, huh, Amy? But giant African American male. He's big picture of him. He's wearing a Legendary Legacy hat, and he's looking down, and his jacket is open, and he's holding the side of this with his hand, and he's pulling it open. And then there's another hand that's coming across and pulling that too. And inside is his rib cage and his heart. And there's words that say, I'm loved, I'm beautiful, I'm a father, I'm cared for, I'm strong, I'm capable. And that was because when we were doing that mural, one of the participants was sharing what they would think should be in the design of this mural. And that individual said that there's so many things about myself that I've had to learn to hide. And I'm doing my best to access them, but it's really hard. And I need help from other brothers to get to them. So that's what we do. If you can help heal a generation of men, then they can go support younger folks. On a real, like, anthropological level, I'll end on this story. There was a there were young bull elephants. I forget where it was. It was a country in Africa, and I watched it on PBS. There were young bull elephants, and they were terrorizing the villages. They were running into the villages, terrorizing the villages. They were killing people, and it was abnormal behavior for elephants, is what this documentary was talking about. And they had a bunch of different experts come in, try to figure it out. Long story short, what they did was they imported a number of adult bull elephants and implanted them into that society. And it was a matter of months, but the raids and the stomping of the adolescent bull elephants began to change because the adult male elephants tried to show them how you do this. They were there to model how those things go. And without the ability to delve into the understanding of who we are and get clarity on that, I'll steal this line from the mystic and philosopher Richard Rohr. He said, absent rites of passages, most males in Western culture are stuck in perpetual adolescence. And so our work about helping heal adult males through our work around Legendary is deeply rooted in prevention. Our intervention work is prevention for generations that are yet to come. We're playing on a longitudinal system level because a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So I'll pause there and open up for conversation, reflection. Looks like we got about 20 minutes. But yeah, we'll go from there. Not everybody at once.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what to say. Just to give you a lot of praise. I'm sort of blown away, but also still charged with a lot of the stuff you mentioned personally, in terms of your journey personally, as a young person, but also as a dad to your two beautiful boys, and then connecting it to the work you do. So just, hats off to you. Again, I don't have the proper language, but you know how I feel about you. And I love the way you framed, the story, connecting it all really, really well. One of the things when you were talking about, you ended with our men sort of like still being stuck in this childhood phase, sort of that term arrested development. And that resonates well with me, 100% with the work that we do with men. So yeah, just long-winded way of saying I appreciate you, man. And a lot of gems, a lot to process. I took a lot of notes, and I'm looking forward to connecting with everyone on the call as we continue to do this work. Obviously, we can't do it in a silo, so I'll be tapping on folks as well. Much love, man.
Love you, brother. Love you, brother. Love you, man.
Ron, I don't have a question as much as a statement. I don't know how long we've known each other. I can't even remember where we met, but I've heard little bits and pieces of your story and seen your story, and but didn't really fully understand it until today. So I just want to thank you for your vulnerability. And I tell people this all the time, to have a conversation like this. This was one sided. I wasn't able to sit back and talk to you about my stuff, but this is where learning about each other develops, and I feel a lot closer to you after hearing your story today. And I just look forward again to continuing our friendship. And just thank you again for everything you brought to the table today, my brother.
I love this brother Bill. Y'all don't know this man saved my life, man. I don't say that jokingly. He and I know what we talking about.
Yeah, I know very well.
Ron, this is Kwame.
Kwame.
Yes. Hey, thank you so much for sharing. And I've always known you to lead by example when it comes to fatherhood. So I come from a background where I grew up in Ghana. I was born in Ghana. I grew up with my grandfather. And one thing that I appreciate about Black men, especially, is the idea of just being present. So whenever I've seen you in the community, just like your boys are always around. And I think from my experience, I'm 45 now, but I always say like the boy in me never died, right? So I try to keep the boy in me alive all the time. I think for many Black boys, we just want you to be present. The idea of just being around, and especially in terms of everything that you shared, it also kind of motivates me to share my story, because I think sometimes hearing stories like the ones that you've shared in the past hour lead us into maybe even seeking help in areas that we need help. So thank you. And always thank you for being present.
I appreciate you, Kwame. And what you said about present is fire. I'm just going to add a little nuance because like we can be present, but like if I haven't done the work, then I'm not even present because like I'm responding to past experiences. Like that's how I might miss Josh and what he's saying. And so this work also allows us not just to be physically present, but to be emotionally, spiritually, psychologically present with our kids in the next generation and those that we have the ability to impact. And I know you're doing that through your soccer program in all these different ways. So I appreciate you too, my brother. I will say, oh, okay, go ahead.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know if this will make a lot of sense, but as you're telling me a story, I can, there's just certain times throughout your whole story that when you paused, it was almost like you were reliving that part of your story again and thinking about it before you were speaking. And I guess that's, I don't know. I think that's what's really moving about it. I hope that makes sense too.
No, it does, Linda. I appreciate you. I mean, that comes from doing a lot of the work to be able to sit in those historic experiences, understand and feel what's going on, but then not allow that to overtake and be like, that's my identity. And so you see those pauses like, yes, I am, right? Because our brain doesn't have a timeline. So that's why I like the traumatic experiences. What I mean by that, like if we think of it, like you can viscerally feel like you're back there. And so to access that so I can speak authentically, that has taken a lot of the work. That takes the space, right, to be able to work through with our skilled guides and therapists to be able to do. So I appreciate that you found some value in that. You know what I didn't talk about, Amy? I apologize. Joyce, I see your hand, but I just want to also land on this because this was about maternal health too, and I didn't talk a lot about this. One of the things that really popped up between my and Joyce, I beg your patience just real quick, is postpartum is real, and I didn't know anything about that. For that their mom had two children in a span of 15 months. And so it wasn't until after I was divorced because for me I didn't get married to get divorced and I don't like to lose, so I started doing a whole bunch of research about what I should have done different. That's just how I work. And so in that I got into this report around postpartum and depression and all this, and this is how I ended up finding the brother Terrence Real. And she was experiencing a level of depression that was keeping her from being able to function, like literally in the bed. And so we have mortgage, we have these two boys, we have things to do. And my depression is manifesting as just work harder so I don't have to feel what's going on. And so I developed so much, man, it was so sad as I think about it now, what her experience must have been of me. But I was genuinely bitter and angry at her. In my head, the narrative was you're doing this on purpose. And even when she, oh, I'm depressed. Yeah, I'm depressed too, but you still got to get work done, right? Just my inability to have language around what was going on for her. And then I love Sean, you talking about tap into what they talking about because postnatal paternal postpartum is real too. Like there's responsibilities that we end up taking on. Some of the stuff my brother Alan was talking about, like that's going on, and we ain't talking to no one about that either, right? And so to have spaces to help know what's going on with your partner, but then also know what's going on with you. Like I just think it is, as a society, there's a level of irresponsibility to not teaching people how this machine works, but then asking them to go do life, right? Like I'm going to give you that. Like you won't even do that with a car, but I'm going to give you this. You're in this body, but I'm not going to explain to you and help you understand how this operates. But then go live this life. And so, as it relates to the conversation around Black maternal health and the work that Sharice Hamlin and others in the community are doing. this is critical too. So I just wanted to throw that in. Joyce, I appreciate your grace and let me run my mouth a little bit on that aspect. And I'll be
Yeah.
quiet.
No, oh man, Ron, I don't even know where to start because I mean it was so I mean you said so much that resonated on so many different levels. And I was thinking, so my brain is constantly in motion. And let me see if I can distill it down to something that sounds semi-coherent. So, I had made a comment about neurodivergence. And when you were talking about, I forgot exactly where it was in your comments, but basically what triggered me to think about neurodivergence, it was something in your comment about like this expectation that we're expecting people to act in a certain way in an environment that is really not set up for them, and not only is it not set up for them, it's like they're coming out of an experience, a historical experience, whether it's a familiar experience or a collective ancestral experience, where survival is just the number one thing you have to do. And so I started thinking more and more about, well, my area of research, I did my dissertation on Black identity, but I'm always thinking about the intersection of Black identity with other identities. And so I'm thinking about, in your conversation today, about your Black identity with your gender identities, being a person who lives their life as a Black male, right? And so, and how race affects you so differently than how it affects me, right? I mean, there's overlap, but because we are different genders, we experience things very differently, and our historical experiences is so different. And so when I think about like how with Black fathers, that intersection of race and gender, expecting them to act or behave in a way that is more in line with like what the larger white society would expect. It's just ridiculous, right? And so then I layer that, and again, I'm talking all over the place, but I'm layering that about things like when you're a neurodivergent person, which I sure that many Black people are, just like there's many white people are, but we're all trying to mask and be in this typical environment, right? And like, so how do we expect a Black man, the intersection of being Black and being male, and possibly being neurodivergent, and that is a huge umbrella, right? And whether the person has been diagnosed with ADD or with being somewhere on the spectrum or having some sensory processing issues, whatever, how does that affect the way that they are responding to their trauma and therefore responding to how they father? I'm just it's like, so that's my own neurodivergence when I'm like, all these ideas that all these things that you're saying today really has me thinking about intersections. That's the bottom line, intersections. And I tried to keep notes but my handwriting is so terrible, but there's just a lot of things I want to revisit. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know your story to this extent, and I thank you for being vulnerable to share your story in this setting. I'm really appreciative of what you're sparking in me to think about, like in my own work as an educator, as a facilitator, how I need to lean into some of these conversations in a different way, in a more nuanced way.
Appreciate you, Joyce. And as I was hearing you think, there's also, I mean, we only had a couple times, a couple hours here, but there's also the aspect, right, if we go back to the trauma of what our Black women experienced in chattel slavery, and then think about the internalization of like the Black male historically as the protector now being emasculated.
Yes.
And so there is some resentment and like, you did not do
right.
what you were supposed,
Yes.
and like that stuff is in there. Right.
Yes.
And then that
yes.
stuff percolates when we in relationship as well. And then you got this dominant narrative that's telling you, so that you're absolutely right. It's a lot of intersection going on. For me, like, again, as a deeply spiritual person, and we can go through, it is that my gender, my complex. These are the way that I am manifested in the physical universe, but it is not who I am.
Mm. Yeah.
And so how the universe experiences me then gives me insight into how it show up. But then just having that understanding for me does provide some agency.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. 100.
Brother Sean.
My interview ended early, so I was able to jump back on. He didn't have a lot of answers. So something you just said, Ron, as you were talking about that, because I missed a big chunk in the middle, unfortunately. But as I came back talking about that, the battle with women and men around that protector role and all of that, what I actually found for me was even more not destructive for that was the inner battle about not being able to be that protector, right? The inner battle of, damn, this is what my role is supposed to be based on what I see as manhood, fatherhood, and all of those things. And for some reason, I don't have the skill set to do that and be that, and not always knowing why we don't have the skill set, maybe whether it be point of reference, whether it be it was never introduced, or we don't have the supports to do that. That I've seen has been far more destructive to our men of color in terms of the way we've gone on about dealing with that, right? That's where a lot of the substance use comes in. That's where a lot of the womanizing comes in. That's where a lot of the physical manifestation of all my angst around all these other things can only manifest themselves in violence if I'm a man, right? The only emotion that I can be emotionally vulnerable about is anger. And that 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds of anger has landed us back in the cycle of incarceration or lack of being there and all those things. And if you look back, that short period of time has always been a manifestation of not be emotionally regulated. But a lot of that comes from not being the man that the world or someone has told me that I'm supposed to be, whether it be my mother saying, "Oh, you're the man of the house now," whether it be, "And how come you can't be the man of the house," or whether it be that the woman you're involved with saying, "I needed you to do this and you were incapable of it," and not understanding that we didn't even know why we were incapable of it. So we destroyed ourselves and destroyed those relationships in those quick moments of time because we were unsure of how to do what we thought we were supposed to do.
That's a daggone mic drop, Sean. Knowing you experience something and having no language to be able to talk about it, that's a child. That's why they scream, they cry, right? When they're babies, because that's all I got. I don't know how else to express I don't have language for it. So it comes out like that. And a lot of our men are doing the same. We didn't even get into the conversation around the broad societal narrative around a Black male is and how that's perpetuated in our mass media, how social media and its construction exacerbates these based on the mechanisms of how that works, right? Like we didn't even get into all that.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, ask a question.
Given all of these handicaps that have been presented to our man, how do we, with duality, also protect our Black women who are often partnered with these men who do not have the language and the emotional regulation to support themselves in a healthy manner? So how do we make sure the burden of being the IEP holder and the everything, secretary, assistant,
Yeah, yeah,
mother, parent that was missing, how
yeah.
do we protect our Black women from having that burden at the same time?
Man, if I had that answer, I'd have a lot more money. But what I will offer up to you, Letitia, is that it comes from creating more spaces like this. It really does. What Sean and Third Exposure are doing, what James Lambert, excuse me, what Isaiah's up to, what we're up to here. Most of our men are in a desert, and I don't know where oases are. I'm thirsty. I don't know where to get a drink. And what I've found, I see Isaiah shaking his head, and I'm sure Sean as well, is when brothers hit these spaces, it's so daggone attractive because it's like, oh, wait a second, like, oh, like that can happen, I it's what I've known is going on, but I haven't had language, and I'm hearing brothers do it, and like I ain't never felt this, and that's really what it taps into. And for some of us, it's like this is kind of scary because it's outside of my control, right? It's like I've never felt this, but I wholly believe that it is a responsibility of ourselves to do that, and to do that healing work and create more opportunities and spaces for folks to be in. This may be controversial and somewhat provocative, but there are a lot of entities broadly, not locally, but all over, where you're trying to do this work, but you haven't healed yourself, and so you really creating dangerous situations, and you're turning people off. You know what I'm saying? Like, even when we think about who we partner with, like we're very intentional about that onboarding on who our partners are, because you are now an extension of the community and the safety we've created. And so, no bad, but what you're up to may not align with what we're doing, right? Part of the existence of Legendary was also, as we were underneath other organizations, just their even built environment was not conducive for our brothers to feel safe, right? It triggered academic school situation. Like, it wasn't a space where like our main room where we run groups, like we call it the living room, and that's on purpose, right? These small things are intentional around. I'll put it like this, and it's somewhat borrowing from the poem from the brother in Antoine Fisher, but if you don't help heal that little boy, what you doing? And so you got some dudes that grew up, but they still little boys. And so little boys need that safety happening. And so we got to create more of them spaces. Sean had his hand up.
I was just going to add to that. It is about those spaces and intentionality around those spaces, and also it's around creating those spaces intergenerationally. So we can start to have these conversations with our black boys that are 6, 7, 8, 9 years old now. But the big part that you said is us doing the work in and of ourselves. I did a piece with James and Isaiah in Boston 2 months ago, and Sed was there, and we were talking about that, and talking about trying to pour from an empty cup, and all of those things. And if you haven't done the work, sometimes it's more destructive because you're trying to solve a problem that you haven't worked on in and of yourself. But I think Joyce said something earlier in the chat about in those spaces. But I think we also have to find spaces that we have those together as man, male, female, male, male, female, female couple, where we can just have those conversations, because it gives us a different perspective in looking at, damn, I never realized that you viewed the world this way. And not in addition to that, I never realized you saw me through a certain lens. And I think we used to, years ago, when I worked for Lynn Simons, we used to run parenting groups out of the Mass Parent Information and Resource Center. And we always did male groups, female groups, and we did a combo group as well. And it broke down some of the barriers around not only the how we distrust each other in some certain, but just how we view each other. And it made conversation and communication and relationships so much easier. So we have so many talented people that are doing this work in this area. We should be having these conversations, whether, if not every other month, quarterly, individually, as well as groups.
Thank you, Sean. That was such a good kind of note to end on, too, how amazing it was to be in this space and hear from all of you. And lots of people said like you gave them new language to think about something, or pause to think about something they really hadn't thought of. And that's healing. That's the work. This was just incredible. Ron, thank you so much. Thank you,
Appreciate y'all.
Sean, Joyce,
Thanks for letting me
Bill.
come in here.
It was so beautiful, and we're so, so grateful. Thank you so much. We got another conversation coming up tomorrow, as Sean pointed out, about Black mental health. We hope you'll join us for that, live in the flesh at the library. Again, thank you all so much for being willing to take on this difficult stuff and talk about it and feel about it and really build community around things that are hard in life. It's awesome. We're really grateful. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Hey, be blessed. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Be well.